Good evening, Akhil.
Evening.
Welcome to Jam with Sam. This is the 23rd episode of Jam with Sam. I was going through a LinkedIn profile and you had started with something called as smartentrepreneur.net. That was the first thing which you had started with. Can you tell me something about that? What was that?
Well, Smart Entrepreneur was one of the many businesses I had got involved with as a serial entrepreneur. So that was basically a portal in the early .com days where we created a lot of articles to inform entrepreneurs how to run their businesses.
Okay.
And we got a lot of good amount of traction. But of course, with the typical .com bust, we did scale, but we didn't really scale enough to exit.
This 2000 ka time?
Way back, yeah.
Way back,
in 2001.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So it was fun. I mean, but I've always been passionate about helping entrepreneurs and teaching entrepreneurs because I realized that most entrepreneurs, there's a lot of information floating around, but very few entrepreneurs are able to realize what's relevant for them.
Exactly.
And in fact, as you may have seen, we have the Center for Entrepreneurs in our Tharman Shani group, where we actually help entrepreneurs first be clear in their mind what their business needs to be and actually come up with business plan. In terms of, for example, if you meet an entrepreneur, let's say in January 2015, and you ask them what's your business going to look out in December 2015, they don't know. They can tell you 10 years from now, we're going to be the biggest XYZ in the world, but what's going to be there in 2015 end, they can't say that. So we help them define that and then build up the education.
So where did you start your schooling in a college? Can you just tell us something about it?
Well, my schooling I think has not ended, but in actual terms, so I went to, I've actually been shuttling around. I grew up in London, hence my odd accent. I went to Campion School in Bombay, then Doon after that, did my engineering in Tharman Shani Engineering, MBA at Kellogg, and now I'm currently doing my PhD in University of Liverpool.
What are you doing?
Oh, in education. I'm doing a thesis on the role of attitude in employability. So I was sharing with some of my friends here that ultimately what really gets a person employable on graduation is the right attitude in terms of making sure they know how to keep on dealing with failure, have the ability to work hard and roll up the sleeves and get their hands dirty. And most recruiters actually look for that attitude in their candidates, but most colleges don't teach that.
Exactly.
So we're actually researching on that area, and we also are implementing that research in our own institution.
So it's a kind of a feet on the street.
Feet on the street, and also the thing is the ability to actually be a little more professional because most students are, the success factor for most students in college is more like let's be cool, let's just chill out, let's just study last minute for the exams and then deliver that time. So otherwise I'm a cool dude, like I am and stuff like that. But the thing is that in the real world, you have to be effective day in and day out. Otherwise, you get kicked out of your job. And most of the time, it's that culture shock. The minute you come into your first job, you wonder, why do I need to be this boring corporate guy, right? And then, but actually, that's the way you succeed, right? You have to get out there. You have to be in a second-class train compartment, going to Ulhasnagar, selling, soap to people who don't like you. But that's what makes you succeed, and that's how you start. And if you're able to give people the attitude to work and keep on working in that way, the ability to work in whatever environment, ability to think on their feet, the ability to actually keep on trying no matter what, that is the attitude that we're trying to build, and that is what we're researching on.
Exactly, because what happens when a person comes straight out of college and when they come to work over there, like they have got no way, how are they supposed to work over there, what are they supposed to do? They have that all the theoretical knowledge.
Correct.
Absolutely no practical knowledge. So 3 months goes training them to do something, like people pass out doing the BCom,
right?
And when they come, they have to use Tally.
Absolutely
they have
true.
No clue what to do over there. So
absolutely true. So I'll give you an example of something that we did. So we run a business school, right? Center for Tharman Shani Center for Management, and a lot of our institute is driven by the students because if you allow a student to take control of their own education, then they are more aligned with the outcomes of education, and they themselves know that this education will help them succeed in their career.
Correct.
So to give you an example, what we did is that at the beginning of the term, we said we're going to allow the students to bid for the electives that they're going to study. So we said, okay, here's a pile of 8 different electives. You each will get something called EduCoins. and you will all bid for the electives that you want. And based on the electives that get the highest bids, we will have those electives in our semester. Another thing that we did, and this actually was driven by our Ganpati festival just happening.
Yeah, I saw the photographs on Facebook.
You saw that, right? So, but what we did is that we now are taking our business students to go to Lal Baksha Raja and actually not just go there and have fun, but actually understand the supply chain that leads up to Lal Baksha Raja. So what's a vendor supplying to Lal? What's the cost of setting it up? What is the whole ecosystem? And you said this is real supply chain management because this is actual practice on the ground.
Correct.
And again, they love it and they really learn some real life stuff and they get engaged by it. And of course, they tell their friends.
So tell us something about Thermal Shani and how it's different from some. There's so many colleges over there.
Right.
What makes you all different?
Besides the fact I'm there? No. No, okay, so the thing is that, let me take a step back, right? So, as you may know, is that my family, we're on the board of 24 colleges. Most of them are Bombay University colleges. And as a lot of you know, is that most college graduates are not employable, all right? And so I've been working in CII for a long time on the education task force. And one of the biggest complaints that CEOs had is that they say that, okay, economy can go up and down, but we just can't hire the right talent. And we said, okay, great. So let's try to build a college from ground up that makes people employable. So we said to do that, let's first understand what you mean by employable. What's this animal employability? So we spoke to around 200 recruiters and asked them, okay, what do you mean by employable? Tell us what does employable mean? And not a single recruiter could come up with a standard answer. They all said, one guy said, oh, you know, when I meet this guy in an interview, he had a certain sparkle in his eyes. He's employable. I know he's the right guy. Another one said that, you know, my company's like a moving car. I need a guy who can be a spare tire, come in immediately and help the company run. I said, great, but I can't create an education system around being a spare tire or having a sparkle in your eyes. So we did a lot of research, and then we narrowed down to 5 parameters that recruiters look for in employable students, right? And what we discovered, and no surprise to you, would be that most of them were in the area of attitude and skills. So they were looking for things like professional behavior. They were looking for people being a self-starter. We said that looking for people to be critical thinkers, problem-solving ability. Then, of course, communication skills. And third, of course, is domain knowledge of the industry that you're in.
Correct.
So then you're all familiar with that old Peter Drucker phrase that what can be measured can be managed. So the thing is that once you have a measure of employability in these 5 parameters, you are able to then start training students to meet those measures. If you train a student to pass an exam, you will train a student to memorize and vomit out content, right? And, but that's the wrong measure. If you align the measure of what you're training to what the recruiter wants, then you have alignment with what the recruiter wants, what the student wants, and you have a structure. So what we do in all our institutes is that we first, when the student comes in, we first give them a psychometric test to help them understand what their natural strengths and weaknesses are. Then we tell them is that, okay, this is what you're naturally good at. Now let's figure out what you want to be when you graduate after 2 years. Very often the student doesn't know, right? So the student said, oh, I want to be rich, I want to be a CEO at the age of 30, you know, millions of dollars. I don't know if any of you guys are that, but mostly they're not. So the thing is that we help them first understand that based on their strengths, what is the sort of career that they'll do better in. Not to say that they're only defined by that, but there's a certain likelihood of succeeding in that career more than others. So for example, like if a student says that, okay, I want to work in an investment bank. So we say that when you graduate as a fresher MBA, the sort of entry-level job that you get in an investment bank will be of an analyst. So therefore, as an analyst, you need to develop your problem-solving ability and your domain knowledge. Versus if the student says, I want to work in an ad agency, then we say the most likely entry-level job that you get in an ad agency will be a client servicing person, right? So therefore, you have to be very strong as a self-starter, very strong communications. Now, even within the subset of these 5 parameters, the student knows what they really need to emphasize on to get what they want to do. So therefore, the student has a starting point and has a path, and then every semester we measure them on these parameters, and the student is engaged by that because the student says, look, I'm not only learning to get the right career, I'm also getting the career that's right for me. So therefore, when the student graduates and gets into their career, they actually perform much better because A, they're more aligned to that job. Secondly, they have the skills for that job. So that's better. And of course, we get a lot more industry interaction. We're the only institute which has industry speakers coming every week.
Okay.
So again, industry speakers from all areas, not just, I was just talking to, I think, Roshan, where we don't talk about just, let's say, how to work in, let's say, this company or that company. We talk about things like attitude. Like we actually talk about people who are failed entrepreneurs, and they talk about their experience. We get people, someone who talks about, let's say, getting into the non-profit space to understand that there's actually more to life than just earning money.
Correct.
So again, it's not just measuring people on attitude and skills. You also are making efforts to build them on attitude and skills. So once you've got the DNA of that education system, with management, then I extended it to media, I extended it to real estate, I extended it to entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It all has that.
Okay. You love single malt.
Yeah, you saw the picture, yes.
So,
Hence the bar stool.
so which is your favorite one so far?
It's like asking, what's your favorite dish? I mean, I like butter chicken, but will I have butter chicken every day? No.
There is butter chicken.
There you go. Today, probably my wife won't be happy to hear that because she likes me on a diet. But no, so your single malt ultimately is based on your mood. So sometimes you want a smokier malt, sometimes you want a lighter malt, sometimes you want a heavier malt. But okay, just let me tell you a little business. What is the difference between a single malt and a regular whiskey, blended whiskey?
Blended has got different blends. Single malt comes from the same barrel.
It's marketing.
It's marketed, okay.
Right. So the thing is that, okay, basically a blended malt, so let's say a Johnny Walker, right? Johnny Walker Black Label, consists of 17 different single malts, right? In the earlier years, all right, I'm talking about most, till like around 7 years ago, most of the whiskey that was produced in distilleries was sent for blending and Johnny Walker, JB and all these things. Now some marketing genius realized that, hey, you know, people want to be snobs. So let's start bottling this as a single malt. So basically it means that instead of actually blending it, we're just going to have from one barrel, one distillery. So therefore you have a wider range of flavors. But ultimately all whiskey is made out of barley, water and fermentation.
Basically vegetarian.
Vegetarian, yeah, well, mostly if you have a fly thrown in. And just as a matter of fact for everyone, please do not spend money on a whiskey that's older than 21 years. It's a waste of money. Because the peak of a whiskey's age is 18 to 21.
Okay.
Then after that it just goes downhill. But then you're paying more money and marketing again gets you.
So if I store it more than like 18 years in my house, does it count over there?
Well, if you can market it, you can count it. Right?
Okay. Okay. What's your favorite platform on social media? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn?
So it's like single malt whiskeys, depending on what my mood is and what the use is. So let me give this way, right? So understand who's my target audience. See, when you're networking, you don't have piles of time, right? So let's figure out what your point is. So for example, when I'm networking, okay, I'm networking with other entrepreneurs, with investors, and people who can help me grow my business. So therefore, LinkedIn is my platform of choice. So therefore, I spend a bit more time on LinkedIn. However, my college, most of my students come from Facebook, right? So therefore, I have Facebook pages for all my colleges, and we do have a lot of content floating out on Facebook. I'm there once in a while, but frankly, my wife is more active on Facebook, so all my pictures you see me are my wife's uploading because she wants to make her kitty friends jealous. So the thing is that for making my wife's kitty friends jealous, Facebook works very well, not LinkedIn. So again, the purpose is different. Twitter is fun because I actually get a track of people like Sam breaking open the barriers to a flyover that was done on Twitter. So I get up to date what's going on and I can have something interesting to talk about. But Twitter's more like an echo chamber in the sense that it's a limited thing, but it's a little more intellectual, not intellectual, but a little more serious. In fact, if you guys have ever used something called Hootsuite. Hootsuite, sorry. Sorry, that's TweetDeck and Hootsuite. It's basically a social media thing that actually helps you analyze who your followers are on Twitter. Yeah. So I discovered to my unfortunate surprise that most of my followers are average age of 41 years old and entrepreneurs and boring old guys like myself.
Okay. Instagram?
My daughter. And my students.
Okay.
Yeah. So what they post on Facebook, they just put on Instagram.
Yeah. It becomes easier posting from Instagram directly onto both those platforms.
That's true. But just to keep you more precise, since I've got a 21-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old daughter, my 17-year-old daughter is not on Facebook, right?
Okay.
So she is on Snapchat, all right?
Yeah.
And she's now on something called Ask FM, which, again, for those of you who is basically you put a profile and people can ask you random questions. And if you are up to the age of 18, it's very active. But once you cross 20, my 20-year-old daughter thinks that Snapchat and Ask is a waste of time. So even social networks, depending on what your purpose is and who you are, will make a difference.
Okay, something about your family. You were just saying, so you can elaborate more.
Well,
about
I think
family.
I've got the most saintly, patient wife in the world. So she puts up with me. Me and my wife, we've been married for 23 years. We had a typical Bollywood type engagement and marriage where, that typical thing, horoscopes not matching and the whole, Rona Dhona and whatnot.
Okay.
But finally we got married.
Okay.
And I chased her for 4 years before we got married. So, well, again, you will see on Facebook that she's still with me. Yeah. 2 daughters. 21-year-old is in London, studying King's College. She's, as an educationist, I told her, please do not study business as an undergrad because you learn nothing. I told her, whatever you do, learn, let's say do a liberal arts degree because you actually will learn how to think. So she's taking political science in King's College in London. My younger one did not want to leave her social network in Bombay. She's having fun, so she's studying psychology in Jain College.
Jain College, okay. Fantastic. Whom do you admire as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm going to give the same single bolt answer. There's no one person. Because you see there's a pattern here. Yeah? So, okay, so let me put it this way, right? So everyone says Richard Branson is a guy to admire, right? But a lot of us don't know that Richard Branson is actually not a very good entrepreneur. A lot of his businesses are losing money. Richard Branson's main skill is raising large amounts of money and getting people to give him money. But most of his business have actually not done very well, except Virgin Atlantic.
Virgin Atlantic,
right?
yeah.
So that's one thing. Bill Gates I like.
Yeah.
He's this thing again. What I like the fact is that up till I think around 8 years ago, he was supposed to be the most evil guy in the world.
Yes.
Then suddenly he decided to start giving his money away. So Microsoft still dominates, but now because he's giving his money away, people like him.
Yeah, because he's donated like almost like $300 million to Rotary.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And
What's not to like?
he's continuing, and he found that Rotary, just a thing, a lot of Rotarians over here,
Right.
that Rotary is one of the most, one of the best organizations, because for every $1 which goes in,
Right.
only 12% goes towards administration
Right.
expenses.
Exactly.
So, no, no, internationally. Internationally
Global.
they have that, global.
Right.
In India, it is like if $1 comes in, we'll give 1.10 out over there.
There you
Because
go.
we don't take anything out of that and we
Correct.
do them. So he does audit. He sends his people secretly to Pune and all these places to do audit over there.
Correct.
And he's like and so even he was an evil guy for me. Like
Right.
we had to, they used to keep sending people to chase us for anti-piracy and all
Right.
that stuff. So now he's become a good man over there.
Well, there you go. So yes, you guys.
So
But I think you could actually learn from any entrepreneur. And I don't think, and I think one thing I realized in life is that never have idols there's no one who's perfectly perfect.
correct.
Each has a skill set that you can learn from. And in fact, you actually learn from a lot of people who are not successful. Because you actually, even for your own failures, I've actually had a lot of failures as I've grown. And who I am today is because of those failures. So who you are is based on what you've been through.
So I saw two more things in your LinkedIn profile. You know, I stalked two things, LinkedIn profile and a Facebook profile.
All right.
So LinkedIn, I couldn't find anything about you. But more of stuff, I found a lot of stuff about it. So you're part of the SAGE group.
Sage
There was
Foundation.
SAGE Foundation,
Yeah.
and there was also Kaizen. So
Yeah.
can you tell us something about both
Okay.
those stuff?
Well, Sage is about giving away money, and Kaizen is about getting a lot of money. So let's start with Kaizen. So Kaizen is basically a private equity fund, and we invest in education. We're the only fund in India that invests only in the education sector. We invest in growth stage education companies. We're doing all right. So I'm a venture partner with Kaizen, and we're doing all right. But I think it's more fun to be an entrepreneur in education than an investor. So always being an entrepreneur is more fun. SAGE Foundation is basically the Shani Academic Global Empowerment Foundation. We are trying to promote education and capacity building among the lesser fortunate. So in fact, we've adopted 100 villages around Bombay. In fact, we were awarded by the Clinton Global Initiative.
Okay.
So my mother went.
I saw that photograph.
There you go, that one.
Saw that
So
photograph.
in fact, my mother said that after Monica Lewinsky, she's the only one who's been hugged by Bill Clinton. Cut that from the video.
Bleep, you know, okay. Fantastic. Okay, quick gun Sam, one witty answer.
Okay,
Baba Ramdev,
smart.
he's doing good marketing. Education,
Necessary but lifelong.
Mumbai,
Mumbai, I love it. I love it.
family,
My life.
Narendra Modi,
Interesting.
okay,
Useful.
useful. Rahul Gandhi,
Well, at least comedians have to talk about something, right?
he's from Doon School. His father was from
He
Doon
was
School.
actually. He lasted for literally 3 months. So he's when I was in Doon School, he was there 2 years junior to me. Sorry, that's a
Okay.
long answer. But when he came in, there were roughly 6 security guards who came along with him. But they couldn't follow him around, so they actually hid themselves as
Students?
No, not students, but as a cook and as a
Oh, shit.
around the thing. So there were people chasing him around. So we got a little concerned. But then he finally went to Switzerland, and they realized that Doon wasn't the best place for him.
So he went to Switzerland.
Well, I guess he had to look after the money.
Money over there. That's not getting cut, don't worry. Okay, what do you feel about, there's a lot of reservations going on in education right now.
Right.
What do you feel about this? There's minority status, there's reservations,
Right.
and really good students are not getting, into the colleges they want and all.
Correct.
Vis-a-vis you see in US, I mean, you see the way people are doing over there is open education.
Right.
What is the problem? You think, is it a government problem? Is it a college problem? Where do you see the problems coming
So I
in?
think the original idea of reservation, and again, in the US, you also have some amount of reservations for minorities and for African Americans. But I think it started off as a good idea that people who are under-resourced and originally marginalized needed an advantage in the education system to grow. But I think what happened is that, as you know, in India, and actually in a lot of Asian countries, it's not just a problem in India. Like you look at Malaysia, there's a whole Bhumiputra policy. Is that as a politician, if you want to appease a vote bank, you have to give them reservations, right? So, for example, this whole
Hardik
reservation,
Patel.
Hardik Patel in Gujarat. So reservation is a good idea, but just the implementation has sort of gone way beyond expected. So what's happening now is that I think Rajasthan now has said
50, 60,
69,
9%.
65% reservation where this thing. So but unfortunately it's not going to go away that quickly. So it's something that I guess we'll have to live with. And I guess on the upside is that for most Indian students, the conventional art, science, BCom is not limiting anymore. So that, in a way, with the education industry opening up, there are a lot more college options there. So therefore, you can now choose other careers. I mean, like you don't have to necessarily be a classic, boring Bombay University student. So in a way, there's a problem, there's always a solution for it.
Okay, so, and what about minority colleges? Like,
Well, okay, besides being on the board of a minority college that, and the fact that if it weren't a minority status, I wouldn't have gotten as an engineer. Yeah, so again, it's an example of reservation. In fact, so you know, a lot of minority colleges have maintained their minority status because then a lot of the government reservation doesn't apply to them. Right?
Okay.
So there have been cases of colleges, which I won't name, top colleges which were really the top in the 80s and 90s when I was a student, have now gone down very badly because the whole reservation policy has gone against them. And it's not just reservation with the students, which is not a bad thing, but reservation in the faculty. Right? So what happens is that then if you have low quality faculty coming in, or people who are just coming in because they feel entitled, then the quality of education starts going down very drastically. So that has ruined some very good colleges in Bombay, unfortunately. But I guess minority status is something that in a way is a defense to reservation. And I think once you have reservation being sorted out, I guess minority colleges will also be happy to
have that.
to
Because
upgrade
just
that.
today I read in the paper is that now Brahmins want minority status.
Yeah, well, it's
So I
everyone's a
said,
minority.
okay, at least somebody is fighting for our cause over there. Okay, word of advice to all the young entrepreneurs out here.
Considering I'm so old. So, see, the thing is that one thing, okay, what's the number one reason that an entrepreneur fails? Interactive.
Maybe because he doesn't know something that he knows after he fails.
Okay, what else?
Lack of experience,
Okay, what else?
lack of passion.
The only reason an entrepreneur fails is when he stops trying. Your specific business may do well or may do badly, you may start a business and close a business, but the minute you say, I've given up, then you fail. And most entrepreneurs, as you know, and forget about what you see in the media, have actually had multiple failures before they've succeeded. So, I mean, classic case for me, right? So the thing is that don't ever, so as an entrepreneur, remember that you have to keep on trying. Even with your existing business, you may need to pivot your model, but don't stop trying, all right? And of course, make sure your cash flow is good. I mean, forget about what venture capitalists and angel investors say. They don't care about you. Being a VC myself, we don't care about you. We want to get our money out. So the thing is, but as an entrepreneur, don't always listen to other people. Focus on what you're good at and just keep trying. That's it.
Okay, the last question is, what do you feel about all this, since you're from the private equity, and about this funding which is going on right now? I mean, people are funding anything.
Right.
And the failures are starting to come up. I think Food Panda is already reducing people out over there.
Right.
So what do you think about this? Is it just a bubble which is ready to burst or something?
So one thing that I think there's a great quote that I heard was never underestimate human stupidity or human greed. So the thing is that the same people who remember the dot-com bust in 2000 are in 2008, 2015. So if you understand economic cycles, there's roughly a 5 to 7 year cycle of up and down, right? And it's nothing to do with how good or bad the company is or how good or bad the industry is. Everyone keeps on saying this time is different. Right? Again, the papers, unicorns. Now there's a new term called unicorpses because a lot of them will not succeed. So the thing is that people will always have hope. So there will be a drop in valuation. A lot of people lose their money. However, wait for another 5 years, you're going to get the same rise again. Because every time there's some new technology, a new financial innovation, and a new way of selling real estate, that'll get people excited. And people always have to put their money somewhere. So that's it. So write it out. So
Okay.
won't worry too much.
Okay, fine. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Akhil,
Thank
for
you.
having me on the show.
And thank you very much for getting me just before Mrs. India, because I thought people were really trying to get me to get over what we want to hear from the lady here.
No, I gave you 40 minutes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's for you.
Oh, thank you.
So first you look there,
All right.
and then you look there.
Okay.
Others will be looking.
Go to all the pictures.
You're looking cross-eyed. Okay. Right.
Got it? Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.